Throughout the long and heralded history of Nintendo, there have been many interesting and unique franchises that have been created by their hand. Each and every one of them was highly innovative in their genres, with some even shaping their own. The Legend of Zelda pioneered the adventure genre, giving the masses a compelling story that they had never seen in gaming before. Metroid would further innovate on the platformer genre, adding horror and exploration elements into the mix. On top of all these sat Mario, everyone's favorite plumber, the character and franchise that had revitalized the platformer genre and even the gaming industry as a whole. But these were just a few of their successes. Some franchises, for a time, just got left behind. Fire Emblem was one of them. A series that starkly contrasted with the cartoony and lighthearted characters Nintendo was known for, Fire Emblem would brave new ground with a darker setting and even more devious gameplay. A brutal franchise for only the most hardcore of gamers. For a time, no one outside of Japan even knew of its existence, let alone how it was created. But with the series' rising popularity and newly christened mainstream status, maybe it's time to shed some light on the matter. A story of swords, dragons, and one man backed by an entire company begins. The story of Fire Emblem's development takes us back all the way to 1973, in the early years of Nintendo's development as a game maker. The company had decided to expand its ventures into a new frontier, electronics. To do so, they split their newly founded electronics department into 3 branches: R&D1, R&D2, and R&D3. Out of all of these though, R&D1 would prove to be the most prominent. Shigeru Miyamoto, the iconic Nintendo game visionary, got his start here, where he worked under Gunpei Yokoi, the eventual creator of the Game Boy. Several years after Miyamoto left due to the success of Donkey Kong, a group of R&D1 programmers formed their own company, Intelligent Systems, and was almost bought on the spot by Nintendo. This new group, under the tutelage of Yokoi, would strive to create new games that were far different from any standard Nintendo affair. Their first effort was Famicom Wars. Releasing in 1988, Famicom Wars became the first in a long line of strategy games for the company. Taking control of 2 warring nations, Red Star and Blue Moon, players were tasked with fighting off the enemy faction and destroying their headquarters completely. It was a standard strategy game in all but name. Now with their feet wet in the genre, the team was bent on creating a franchise worthy of their name. After Famicom Wars' release, Intelligent Systems had diverted its attention to more simulation-based games. They wanted to do something like Famicom Wars, but with a new spin on it that was wholly original. But who would craft this new masterpiece? One man would answer that call. A man by the name of Shozo Kaga. His idea was never meant to be a commercial project according to him, but he still had a vision, and with it a vast knowledge of game design to boot. Shozo quickly put the studio to work to develop his creation. Along with him, his team would consist of game designer Tohru Naharino, characters designed by Daisuke Tsuka, and the iconic music provided by composer Yuka Tsujiyoko. Unlike Famicom Wars before it, Shozo's game would add new mechanics to differentiate itself from its predecessor and other strategy games on the market, combining the strategy and role-playing genres' inner workings to mold its own unique hybrid. There would be nothing quite like it for some time. Even though it wasn't the most technically advanced game on the NES, it was still groundbreaking in more ways than one. And on April 20th, 1990, after 2 years of hard work, Japan would be the first to understand this. Fire Emblem. Ankokuryu tu Hikari no Suguri, roughly translating as Fire Emblem Dark Dragon and Sword of Light. This was the first mainstream strategy RPG on the market, beating out other titles such as Sega's Shining Force and Super Robot Tyson for the claim. Fire Emblem also ditched the modern military setting that Famicom Wars was known for and decided to go for an environment set in medieval times, with swords, magic, and fantastical beasts throughout. Its story would follow this fantasy route too. Our lead protagonist was Marth, a prince of the nation Altea. All is well in the kingdom until the neighboring kingdom of Deluna attacks, forcing Marth to become an exile in the nation of Talis. With his sister Elise taken hostage and his father killed by the evil priest Garnif, Marth must gather an army to retake his homeland and find the sacred sword Falchion and the mysterious Fire Emblem to vanquish a resurrected Medeus once and for all. Fire Emblem was a remarkable story for its time, with few games being able to hold a candle to it. Games with stories were hard to come by at the time, but the unique battle system that Fire Emblem had was even scarcer, but it still held close to its roots in a few ways. Fire Emblem's system was similar to Famicom Wars, with battles being totally automatic and decided by offensive and defensive numbers alone on a grid-based system. But after that, it started to branch off into its own beast. Battles took place against individual units instead of huge groups of troops attacking each other. It was also less about building troops and sending them off to their deaths like in Famicom Wars, and had a deeper connection to its troops. Fire Emblem's characters were unique in their own right, and each and every one of them had their own purpose. There were your classic mages, knights, and spearmen alike, but there were also Pegasus Knights, and dastardly thieves to wield at your leisure. Nearly all of them could be promoted to more powerful classes like the Dragon Knight, and leveled up with standard RPG mechanics. It was an interesting system that Shozo and his team had created, but these were not the things that Fire Emblem would truly be known for. Its difficulty would be the main reason. This difficulty was the side effect of one of Fire Emblem's creations: permadeath. Permanent death, or permadeath as it's so affectionately called, meant that when a character fell in battle, he was dead for good. There was no way to bring him or her back from the brink. This, of course, affected the story tremendously, with cutscenes changing depending on who lived or died, with some of them not appearing at all if someone was lost. Fire Emblem became a careful dance with death as you tried your very best to keep your favorite characters alive and kicking. Death wasn't the only form of difficulty, however. Enemies were ruthless in their tactics. The arena forced you to risk both life and limb for a reward. You couldn't save in the middle of a chapter, and the victory condition of every chapter required you to have Marth in the lead. Fire Emblem was one of the most difficult games of its era, and proved to be a great challenge for gamers. After the game's release, sales remained flat for a time. A new IP had just released, and no one had heard of the new kid on the block. 2 months later, with word of mouth at a fever pitch, the game was a success that Nintendo wanted to replicate. But this entry would behave like many of Nintendo's other franchises. Super Mario Bros. 2, Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link, and many, many more were all vastly polarizing compared to their predecessors. You either loved them or you hated them. Fire Emblem Gaiden, or Fire Emblem Side Story, released in March of '92, and was more of the same with a bunch of added twists. Instead of being a truly direct sequel, it took the side of its name to heart. Paralleling the events of the first game, Fire Emblem Gaiden follows the story of two protagonists, Celcia and Alm. Both hail from the kingdom of Sofia in the land of Valencia, that is in a constant war between the neighboring kingdom of Rigel. Dropped in between these two warring nations, it is up to these childhood friends to build their own army, save the peaceful nation of Mira, and invade Rigel to finally bring peace to Valencia. A complicated plot for sure, but Fire Emblem Gaiden was still a proud successor of the series. While many things changed, some decided to stay the same. Comparing battles between the first two games, it wouldn't be hard to mistake one for the other, but a deluge of RPG elements would try to help it stand on its own. Instead of a whole slew of battles spread across a linear world map, Gaiden introduces a navigatable world, where each step represents a new location, such as classic Fire Emblem battles, as well as town exploration, similar to other iterations of the genre. The battle system changed around too, with characters now being able to attain different classes, allowing you to mix and match them to your own liking. For example, you could turn a soldier into a spellcaster, or an archer into a thief. Difficulty was ramped up even more than before, and permadeath was as brutal as ever. If you lost enough units at a certain point, you couldn't even complete the game, something that many people found out the hard way. Fire Emblem Gaiden was even tougher to beat than the original Fire Emblem, and that was saying something. Somehow, even amongst all of this, Fire Emblem Gaiden had managed to outsell its predecessor, shaking the second game curse that had plagued many Nintendo games before it. Intelligent Systems had a winner on its hands. A company that had formed from just a group of close colleagues had grown into its own, competing on the level of many of the Nintendo greats. The creation, Fire Emblem, was innovative for its time, molding the tactical RPG genre into what it is today. But its story and characters are what helped it stand out in a crowd of knockoffs and copycats. There was nowhere to go but up for this company, and its new proud vision. It was time to go super. Hello dear viewer, and thank you for watching another episode of Chronicles. If you enjoyed hearing about the origins of Fire Emblem, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for something new every week. But who am I? Well, I'm Lockstin, the main voice for Chronicles of Gaming. If you want to learn more about gaming with theories and reviews alike, then check out my channel here for more. So what did you think about the creation of Fire Emblem? And are you going to try to play the originals after watching this video? Chris and I would love to hear what you have to say in the comments below. And so until next time, don't forget to stay awesome and continue that thirst for knowledge.